At my brother's birthday party, everything seemed normal until my stepfather made a cruel joke about me being a mistake, and everyone laughed. So I silently left, then quietly turned his world upside down. "You're just the reminder of a bad decision." That's what my stepdad said in front of everyone. With a glass of whiskey in his hand and a stupid grin on his face, he looked right at me and dropped those words like they were part of some harmless joke. But no one flinched. They all laughed. And I just sat there, frozen. Let me back up a little. My name's Mira. I'm 29 now, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the outsider in my own family. My mom, Lena, remarried when I was 10 to a man named Craig. He was charming, successful, and completely uninterested in being a father to a kid who wasn't his. 2 years later, my little brother Noah was born, and from that moment on, it was like I disappeared. Craig treated Noah like royalty: private tutors, expensive hobbies, endless praise. And me? I was the extra, the leftover, the "well, she's already here" child. He never hit me, never screamed in my face. No, it was worse than that. It was the polite indifference, the eye rolls, the backhanded compliments, the constant comparison to Noah. I used to try. I really did. I got good grades, helped around the house, smiled through it all, hoping maybe someday he'd see me as more than the girl who ruined his clean slate. But that day never came. A few weeks ago, Noah turned 24. He was throwing a birthday party at my mom's house, the one Craig bought. And even though I had work, I showed up. Because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Be supportive. Be there. Family first, even if you're always last. The party was nice at first. Catered food, music, lots of their friends from the golf club. I mostly stayed near the drinks table, sipping soda and avoiding conversations about promotions and beach homes. And then Craig stood up to give a toast. He raised his glass, smiled proudly at Noah, and started with, "To my son. My pride. My greatest investment." Everyone clapped. Cameras flashed. I stayed quiet. Then he turned to me. "And of course," he said, pausing just long enough to make my stomach drop, "to Mira. Proof that even bad decisions can have a silver lining." There was a beat of silence, then laughter, like it was just some cheeky joke. Except it wasn't. I knew that tone. I'd heard it all my life. It was the same one he used when he called me high maintenance as a teen for asking for new shoes. The same one he used when he said, "At least you're not dumb," after I got into college. Every time it was masked with a smirk and passed off as sarcasm. But the sting never changed. My mom laughed too. Just a soft chuckle, like she didn't quite know how to react. But she didn't stop him. She never does. Noah didn't even look at me. He just clinked his glass and smiled. I sat there with my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the music anymore. I wanted to scream. I wanted someone, anyone, to say, "Hey, that wasn't okay." But no one did. No one ever does. I looked around that room full of people who were supposed to care about me, and I realized they didn't even see me. Not really. I was just tolerated. A ghost in a nice dress. So I stood up. No big scene. No yelling. I just picked up my purse, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. Not one person followed me. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had finally snapped. And this time, I wasn't going to let it go. Because the girl who stayed quiet, she didn't live here anymore. And what came next? They never saw coming. When I got to my car, I was shaking so badly I couldn't get the keys into the ignition. My hands wouldn't stop trembling, and my chest felt like it was closing in. I hadn't even realized I was crying until I saw the tears dotting my steering wheel. I just sat there, alone. I should have driven home, but instead I stayed parked outside that house for almost an hour, watching people laugh, dance, eat cake, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been publicly humiliated by the man who helped raise me. No one came out. Not my mom. Not Noah, not even a text. Eventually, I drove back to my apartment. My phone buzzed once. Uber Eats notification. That was it. For the next few days, I didn't hear from anyone. I waited. I thought maybe my mom would check in. Maybe Noah would apologize. Maybe someone, just one person, would acknowledge how wrong it was. But nothing came. The silence was louder than any insult Craig had ever thrown my way. So on the third day, I sent a message, just one, to my mom. It said, "You okay with what he said? Is this just normal now?" She didn't reply for hours. When she did, it was just, "Mira, you know Craig jokes like that. Don't make this bigger than it is." I stared at her message for so long my screen dimmed. Don't make this bigger than it is. I wanted to scream. My mom, a woman who once cried when a stranger called her the wrong name, was telling me to just get over it. Like it was no big deal. Like being labeled a mistake in front of 50 people was just casual dinner conversation. And then came Noah. His message? "Hey Mira, don't take it so personally. You know how Craig is. Besides, it was my night. Don't ruin it retroactively." Retroactively. Like I had traveled back in time and somehow corrupted his birthday by having emotions. I didn't reply. I couldn't. But inside I was breaking. Not because of Craig, not anymore. I'd expected nothing from him. But my own mother, my brother, they were supposed to love me, protect me, at the very least see me. Instead, they stood by and watched me be ridiculed, and then blamed me for making it uncomfortable. That was when I knew. It had never just been Craig. They were all complicit. My whole life, I thought I was the one on the outside because Craig didn't like me. But the truth was, my family had always made room for him, and less for me. Even when I was 14 and Craig forgot to pick me up from school because he was too busy taking Noah to fencing. Even when my mom told me to let it go because he's trying his best. Every time they asked me to shrink, to understand, to forgive. And I did. Until now. Because the real betrayal wasn't Craig's words. It was the way they all let it slide. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, replaying everything. Every dinner where I was the one washing dishes while Noah got to rest. Every birthday I spent watching him blow out candles on cakes my mom used to bake for me. Every little moment I told myself wasn't a big deal, but they added up, and now I couldn't unsee it. The next morning, I blocked Craig's number. That felt good. Then I blocked Noah. My hands hesitated over my mom's contact, but I didn't block her. Instead, I sent her one final text. "I hope someday you realize what it means to let your child be treated like a burden. I was never the problem. I just finally stopped pretending to be okay with being invisible." She didn't reply, but someone else did. Late that night, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. I used to work with Craig, and there are things you should know. About him, about your family." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my ears. There are things you should know. At first, I thought the message was a scam. "You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. I used to work with Craig, and there are things you should know. About him, about your family." It came from an unknown number at 11:47 p.m. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself it was just someone messing around. But something about the wording, it felt deliberate. Like this person wasn't guessing. They knew exactly what to say to make me hesitate. And I did hesitate. For the next 30 minutes, I paced my apartment in circles, heart thudding in my chest. I thought about deleting the message, blocking the number, forgetting it ever came. But then I typed back, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "My name's James. I was Craig's assistant for 3 years. He made your life hell, didn't he? I saw more than you think." I froze. No one on the outside had ever said that to me. My family always made it seem like I was imagining things, overreacting. But this stranger had seen it, and now he was offering answers I didn't even know I needed. We agreed to meet the next day. I chose a coffee shop across town. Public, bright, neutral ground. I wore a hoodie and sunglasses like I was in a bad spy movie, but I didn't care. I needed to know what this guy knew. James was already there when I arrived. Mid-30s, clean-cut, nervous energy. He stood as I approached and said, "You look just like her." I blinked. "Like who?" He paused. "Your mother, back then." That made my stomach twist. We sat. And then he started talking. Turns out Craig wasn't just emotionally abusive behind closed doors. He was the kind of man who weaponized charm to cover rot. At work, he bragged constantly about how he tamed his wife's rebellious daughter. He once told James, "Every woman needs a reminder of who's in charge. My stepdaughter? She's a walking lesson." James said Craig kept files on people, clients, employees, even family. He documented weaknesses, secrets, anything he could use if things ever went sideways. I sat there, speechless, the pieces falling together like puzzle fragments I'd spent years trying to ignore. And then James dropped the bomb. "Your mom tried to leave him once," he said quietly. 5 years ago. She filed for separation. I was the one who faxed the papers for her, at her request. But 3 days later, she withdrew everything. I leaned forward. "Why?" He hesitated. "Craig had something on her. I don't know what. But after that, she changed. Stopped talking to me. He fired me not long after." I felt like the ground shifted under my feet. My mom, the same woman who told me to stop being dramatic just days ago, had once tried to escape him too. And then she stayed. It made sense now. Her silence. Her constant defense of him. The way she flinched when he raised his voice but pretended nothing happened. She hadn't just enabled his cruelty, she had survived it, by aligning with him. And she'd left me to do the same. I thanked James. We parted ways. But inside, something was breaking. When I got home, I sat on my bed and stared at the wall for hours. My whole life, I thought I was unlovable, difficult, too much. But now I saw it clearly. I was the scapegoat. The one everyone dumped their guilt onto so they wouldn't have to face their own shame. And just when I thought nothing could surprise me more, it happened. Around midnight, I got a text from Noah. No words. Just a photo. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer. $15,000 from my mom's account to a private investigator. The caption, "You should probably know they've been watching you." That screenshot haunted me. $15,000 from my mom's account to a private investigator. And my brother had known. The message didn't come with an explanation. Just that one chilling line. "You should probably know they've been watching you." At first, I couldn't breathe. My skin felt cold, and I had to check the photo 3 times just to make sure it wasn't fake. But it wasn't. I knew the last 4 digits of my mom's account. She used them for every password growing up. There was no doubt. It was her. I wanted to scream. All this time, I thought they were just emotionally manipulative, just toxic. But hiring a PI to spy on me? What exactly were they looking for? Evidence I was unstable? Proof I was lying about Craig? Or worse, were they trying to protect something they knew I was close to uncovering? That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I got to work. I remembered something James told me during our meeting. Craig kept files. That had stuck with me. And if he was the control freak I'd always suspected, he wouldn't just destroy something like that. He'd keep it, hide it, because men like him need leverage. And I knew exactly where he'd keep it. Craig had a detached office behind their house. It looked like a fancy shed from the outside, but I'd been in there before. Mostly when I was younger, bringing him coffee or some forgotten charger. He never let anyone else go in. Always kept it locked. But once I saw him slide the key under a brick by the back porch. I didn't hesitate. I waited until Saturday. Craig's golf day. My mom would be out running errands like she always did. I drove to the neighborhood, parked 2 streets away, pulled on a hoodie, and slipped through the side alley like I belonged there. My heart pounded with every step. I checked under the brick. The key was still there. Classic Craig. So confident he'd never be crossed, he didn't even bother changing the hiding spot. I opened the door and slipped inside. It was cold, sterile, organized in that overly meticulous way that screamed man with secrets. Filing cabinets lined one wall, labeled by years. I didn't even know what I was looking for, until I saw a drawer labeled Lena, Legal, my mother's name. I pulled it open and froze. There it was, the separation papers from 5 years ago, like James said. But there were more. Notes, printed emails, bank statements, and then a folder marked MIRA, Observe. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were surveillance photos of me. At my apartment, at work. One of me getting coffee with an old college friend. Notes scribbled in Craig's handwriting. Unstable? Financially independent. Possibly sees therapist? He hadn't just wanted to monitor me. He was building a case against me. Like I was a threat. Like I was the problem he needed to eliminate from his perfect little world. I snapped photos of everything. Every document. Every scribble. Every disgusting piece of evidence he thought he had. I didn't take the originals. I wanted him to wonder. I wanted him to feel the panic I'd felt that night when I found out they were watching me. I left the office exactly how I found it. Lock, brick, everything. And then I went home. I started organizing the files. Not to destroy him, at least not yet, but to prepare. I wanted options. I wanted control. For once in my life, I wanted the upper hand. The next day, I got a text from my mom. Craig's been in a horrible mood. Something's wrong. Did you say anything to him? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because something even bigger had just landed in my inbox. An anonymous email. No subject line, just one sentence. He's not your real father, and Lena's been lying about everything since the beginning. The email hit harder than anything I'd read so far. He's not your real father, and Lena's been lying about everything since the beginning. There was a scanned document attached, a birth certificate, my birth certificate. And in the section labeled Father, the name was blank. Blank. I stared at it for what felt like hours, my mind unraveling in real time. My entire life, I'd believed Craig was my biological father, that I was the mistake he never wanted, the burden, the inconvenient child from a rushed marriage. But the truth was even worse. I wasn't his, and everyone had known. My hands were shaking when I called the hospital records office listed in the email footer. I gave them my name, my mother's, the file number attached to the scanned document. The woman on the phone sounded polite, almost casual when she said, "Yes, that birth record is authentic. Is there anything else you need?" I didn't need anything else. I needed answers. From Lena. So I drove. No warning, no call. Just straight to the house I once called home. She answered the door in an apron, like she'd just stepped out of a commercial for suburban motherhood. The moment she saw me, her smile vanished. "Mira." I held up my phone. "Don't lie to me." She didn't even ask what I meant. Her face crumpled like wet paper. "It was before Craig," she said softly, like that made it better. "You were from someone else. He didn't want kids that weren't his. I told him we'd start over, that he could raise you as his own, if we never talked about the past again." I stepped back, like her words were physically pushing me. "You let him treat me like garbage for years," I whispered. "You let him humiliate me. You let him call me a mistake, and all this time he wasn't even my father?" She looked at me then, and I swear, for a split second, there was guilt in her eyes, but not enough. "I did what I had to do to survive," she said. You'll understand one day. No, I said, cold and clear. I understand now, and I'm done surviving for you. I turned around and walked straight to my car, because I had a plan. I spent the next week putting together a package. Everything from Craig's secret files, the surveillance photos, the fake narratives, the PI payments, the leverage folders labeled with client names. I didn't go to the police. I went to the people he feared most, his investors. I mailed the evidence anonymously. 2 weeks later, I started hearing things. Craig was removed from the board of his own company. His license was suspended pending investigation. At least 3 of his former clients filed formal complaints for breach of trust. And Lena? She called me once. No apology, just tears. She asked if I'd done it. I told her the truth. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I just stopped protecting your lies. And then I hung up. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've moved to a new city. I started therapy. I'm rebuilding, slowly but intentionally. I still have trust issues. I still get angry. But I've also learned that healing doesn't come from waiting for someone to say sorry. It comes from standing up, from choosing yourself, from knowing your worth even if no one else ever did. I used to think closure was a conversation, a final scene with perfect timing and soft music. But sometimes closure is a locked door, a package in the mail, a number you delete and never save again. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a courtroom. It looks like walking away and never looking back. If you've ever had to choose your own peace over being the scapegoat, leave a comment with the number 8. You're not alone. And if stories like this remind you of your own journey to healing, make sure to subscribe for more real Reddit stories about truth, closure, and finally saying enough.